Our last BBM5 draft of the season. That is what we are doing on this episode of the RotoViz Best Ball Show. It's myself, Colm Kelly. I'm joined by RotoViz writer Kevin Szafraniec, and we're going to draft what will be my last team, but we'll also be drafting what is Kevin's 150th team. Max entering the contest, but you've a lot of practice. 149 of those drafts done. Number 150 is going to be the perfect draft that we just crush the competition and bring home the first place prize and the massive cash advance that goes along with that. So I'm looking forward to this, Kevin. We've done a couple together. We're going to have a fun draft here. We're going to kind of reminisce maybe on some of the moves of the offseason in terms of how ADP has shifted, and then try and build out the best roster that we possibly can. How does it feel? Is there a bit of relief to get the 150th one done? We are at 96% filled in the contest. I would expect it potentially by the time you're listening to this to already be filled. 149. How much work did it take to get through them all?
Well, it's a lot. I mean, even before that, all the pre-draft stuff, the big board, the little board. I mean, been drafting since before. I was doing drafts during the Super Bowl last year, so it's pretty bittersweet. It's like it's nice as a relief to kind of just get away. I still have some other drafts going on FFPC, but this is like really the last Underdog draft of the whole entire season. So yeah, bittersweet is the best way to put it. I enjoy it, but like sometimes it's a grind getting up in the morning and seeing that you have, you're on the clock in 30 drafts and you just kind of got to grind through it,
Yeah, I love drafts. I love the slow drafts as well. You kind of mentioned being on the clock and multiple of those at the same time. And it is a case that when you wake up in the morning and you're like, the first few days you're doing, then you're like, this is lovely. I love getting a few picks in the morning. And then as it goes along, you're like, oh, I just have so much stuff to do, but you have to jump in. But drafting is one of my favorite times of the whole season. And it's kind of like a case now where we will have maybe a few weeks where we're like, I missed drafting, because it's over. But you're also looking at how your portfolio is doing, how things are going. And then I don't know about you, Kevin, but I know that I'm in, dynasty, redraft, all that sort of stuff. You get into the waiver wires then, and it'll be the same. The first waiver run, you'll be like, oh, this is exciting. And then you get into like week 4 and you're like, oh, not another waiver run. What time have we to get this submitted by? So that's the way it all plays out. But we are going to do one more, as we mentioned, Kevin's last $25 in the Underdog account, and it's going to turn in to the top prize. So click in, Kev. We're doing this for anyone listening, not live. We're doing it recorded. We're posting it after the fact. We're not streaming this one live, but we are doing it at 7 a.m. Kevin's time, noon my time. I was going to say, let's see how long it takes to fill up. It took 3 seconds. We have 55 seconds to go to the draft kicks off. We get the 105, Kevin, which is, I've talked about, nice slot to be in, middle of the draft room, get those opportunities of some fallen values. Pretty fun spot to be in here for this draft.
Yeah, absolutely. 105 is probably one of my favorite spots because you know that you're going to get one of the guys at the top, one of the receivers. So, and even if you want to get wild and take like a Breece Hall or Bijan Robinson, it's always an option too. But generally, sticking to one of those top receivers at that spot.
Yeah, so since we've drafted previously, we've had a few contracts signed around the NFL. CeeDee Lamb gets his done. He's obviously back with the Cowboys. We get Brandon Ayuk's kind of in the last 24 hours getting done. That was a drawn out long story that at a point I just like decided he's probably going to be back. And I mean a point, I mean like 2 months ago, before a lot of the trade rumors heated up. And then when the trade rumors heated up, I thought, yeah, I'm going to look like I was completely wrong with that take. But that has worked out. He's back there. People probably get nice discounts on him. I haven't really been drafting him that much over the last couple of weeks. I've been drafting Deebo Samuel more than Ayuk over the course of the offseason, but earlier in the offseason, I did take more Ayuk in some of those teams, so I've kind of balanced it out a little bit. We do get CMC, then CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill off the board, 2 picks away. Have you a preference between Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamar Chase at this stage, the late stage of the offseason where we get that opportunity to make the decision, or what about Justin Jefferson?
From an exposure standpoint, I think of the 3, I have the least amount of Amon-Ra, but I mean, I think they're all pretty much equal in a vacuum. So if you have a preference, I'm willing to let you have
no strong
this one.
preference. It is your last draft. I haven't drafted a huge amount of Jamar Chase, but I think that I would lean here towards Justin Jefferson if you want to go that way.
Yeah.
Usually we're saying, you have time, depending on how the draft board plays out, over the course of the offseason, you're going to get to balance these out. This is the last BBM draft. and I want to take the player that I think is the supernatural talent. I think Jamar Chase has that, but although we have quarterback concerns with Jefferson, I just think that he is one of those generational players, and I'd like adding him to the roster where I can. I haven't drafted him as much this offseason. Again, a lot based on draft slot and being able to take St. Brown and Chase, so adding him in. Interestingly, there, I assume that Jefferson was not the pick you would have made if you were doing this solo.
No, probably just for exposure's sake, I might have gone Amon-Ra, just because I think I'm the lowest out of all those three guys on him. But I mean, I'm happy taking any of those three guys. They're all superstars, and there may be something up on the site just to be kind of like a little tongue in cheek that I might have written about Justin Jefferson and his offense, about how they may be undervalued this year. It's actually a really fun piece that I just put out in the last week, looking at the Vikings offense, and kind of how people maybe, even with Sam Darnold, it may be, the coach, between the coaching and the weapons he has around him, it may be a situation that people maybe are doubting a little more than they should be. So,
and it may be a case that it's like, even if we look at it as like just pure volume based, you now have a situation where like TJ Hawkinson is missing confirmed, obviously, to miss the first 4 weeks of the season. I just think that volume wise, it could be something that, we look at Keenan Allen, with Phillip Rivers and things like that, where there's just like a landslide of volume, double-digit targets every single game, even up into maybe the mid-teens in targets. I think we're going to see something like that with him. So adding him in's fun. It also opens up the door to, Jamar Gibbs, as I say, that goes off the board, but it opens up the door to some of those other options without having to fully stack the Lions, and that also means opening up the door to, like, you can have multiple on your roster, but like Sam Laporta in a couple of rounds time and things like that. It just is different ways that you can play it. Whereas when I look at Justin Jefferson, it's pretty much Justin Jefferson or Jordan Addison that I'm looking at in that range in terms of their wide receivers on that offense, like Hawkinson as well. If you have additional tight ends prior to that pick, but just trying to go a little bit different here. I guess what I'm trying to say is I've drafted Amon-Ra St. Brown more. So I'm kind of on the opposite end to you maybe on that. So we are a couple of picks away here, one pick away. I was going to mention Deebo Samuel. He did go.
Yeah.
One of my favorite players to draft this year is Chris Olave. He is the next wide receiver by ADP, and then it would be Devontae Adams, Malik Neighbors, like Olave. We do have some running back names, Achane, Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor. I would, and Taylor goes. I would lean to Olave here. Have you a preference over him?
The only thing, if we wanted to go with Achane, actually have kind of a bold take that should be seeing light pretty soon about the Miami backfield. You want to do Achane? Wow. I was gonna lean Olave, but if you
I know, go the other way, go Olave. Then I thought you were gonna say a bold take that meant that we should draft him. I was trying to open it up for the content here.
Yeah.
Hit me with it. I was waiting when you said I was going to say something about, I thought you meant like, Supernova Achane is here.
It's actually part of the bold takes article that'll probably be out by the time the stream gets released. Michael Dubner's put it together as like a compilation across the site. But my bold take has to do with that backfield. So I'll leave it until
leave it at a teaser.
Yeah,
it's obviously not that you should draft him over Chris Olave. I have a lot of Olave. He has been at the back end of every second round, like a priority kind of target. One of the reasons as well there when we are on the board for Jamar Chase, and I know again I talk about bye weeks, and it's not essentially, and it's not an important part at this point, but one of the reasons sometimes I pass on Chase is just the other week 12s that come up that you can add to the roster, and rather than put yourself in a tighter position as you move along through the draft, it kind of opens up some pathways there. And a lot of that then is I have a lot of Olave in the second round. Good catch there, because I thought you were going to really say, like, I've drafted so much Olave, I want to go in a different direction. So we don't do that. We're 2 picks away. Hit me with some of your favorite names here, because I feel like I've leaned towards how we're going in this draft so far. Who's your favorite mid-third round player to select here?
Well, I think it's really none of the guys that are available at the top. I'd probably go Dell right here if I,
it'll be Dell or Diggs. They're both beside each other. Either of those. I'm kind of hoping that maybe a Laporta or McBride get back in the third or the fourth round to us. But either of those, if you have a preference, Dell or Diggs, I'm good with.
Yeah, I've been going Dell pretty consistently. But I mean, the thing is, if you want Diggs, he never really seems to ever make it back, even if you're at the end of the first, unless for some reason they both fall to like the turn and you have the 12 spot, like
Yeah.
you're not getting them both anymore. Where earlier in the season it was a
You,
lot easier to stack those Houston receivers up.
yeah, that is one of the areas where the ADP has shifted. You'll see it obviously as well with the Chiefs wide receivers. We've seen a lot of movement and how they are moving up draft boards. So there's a couple of those that you could put those rooms together earlier in the offseason. Obviously, Rashee Rice, there was the concern around a potential suspension. That is obviously looks like it's no longer the case. It's certainly early in the season. We'll see if anything happens during the year. But that has obviously pushed his ADP right up. We've obviously had hype around Xavier Worthy. Spoiler alert for my bold prediction on that article is around Xavier Worthy, who I mentioned this to Sean on an OT that has just recently come out, up to 60% exposure on the FFPC for Xavier Worthy, which I feel is scandalous, even for a worthy truther. But Rashee Rice does go in this one at the 310. We'll see what comes back around. I'm kind of hopeful that we see some of those tight ends. They generally do. Usually Sam Laporta early fourth, then Kelsey, then McBride across the fourth round. So I'd be happy here to get McBride if he was to come back to us. But a nice fun start, Jefferson, Olave, and Dell there. So fun time so far in this draft. And I haven't done a lot of these outside of with you in recent weeks. And it is fun to, did an FFPC. Trey McBride went at the 311. I did do a fun draft with Sean in the FFPC $125 best ball tournament within the last 24 hours. And it's fun to jump back and forth in terms of the way the boards look after, 5-6 rounds. It's a completely different picture. It is interesting, though. I'd imagine that we're looking at team 11 in this draft. It's Puka, Marvin Harrison, Trey McBride. They're setting up to go with the Cardinals. I like setting up, stacks as you go through a draft, but I'm trying not to like force it in that case. And that's where you can start to force things, but it isn't, it's half a round ahead of ADP on McBride. And again, we've drafted McBride probably in the early third round, and some of these drafts of players aren't there for us. We are 4 picks away. The advantage of doing these not on stream, I did actually get a few comments in the last week on some of the, the main event streams that myself and Sean and Ben and Sean have done. And we record them and we put them up, and I usually put in the thumbnail, live draft. And people were saying like, you shouldn't be doing these as streams. And I'd reply like, most of the time though, people's comments are, why aren't you doing these as streams? So it was the first time I've got the opposite comment coming through. So we do get Laporta getting drafted as well. Then just a couple of spots before us. We're 3 picks away. Opens up the door to other potential opportunities though, but there isn't a massive amount of names here as I look through that I'm like really having to have. I'm looking at McBride and Worthy, who are a little bit further down the queue. Is there anyone else though standing out for you between those? There is a chance, we're seeing at the moment so far a little bit of a drop on the quarterback position here. There is a possibility, if you take for example here a Dalton Kincaid, if he gets to you may see a slide in Josh Allen, but you probably aren't getting him at that point. What's your favorite pick here? 2 picks away.
I'm generally reaching, honestly. I'm not a big fan of taking a lot of elite quarterbacks. So I would prefer to kind of go like Worthy or Kincaid, even though they are,
I think now that the drafter before us did take Allen, so we don't have to worry about that conversation anymore. It depends if you think that you can get Worthy here and then one of Andrews or Kincaid comes back. That's the way I'd probably play it. Have you a strong preference otherwise?
I'm good with that. I think there's enough. As far as the wide receiver value, I think Worthy's the best value at this point, and then just kind of see which tight ends swing back through.
I have to say, I mentioned 60% on the FFPC. Just a disclaimer here: if Worthy gets hurt in week 1, my season will take a big impact. We'll just put that out there. People aren't surprised. Drafting a huge amount. Have you been clicking on him as the offseason has continued? Have you been starting to move into Rice? How have you been playing the Chiefs wide receivers?
I have the biggest exposure to Worthy. I'm probably underexposed to Rice, honestly. I was grabbing him. I didn't, I thought that he would probably have a decent role throughout the majority of the season. Now that's pretty much coming out that it's likely he'll play the whole season. I mean, he's flying up board, so I'd like to get him now. I generally, obviously you want the ADP value, but at the same time, also the shifting ADPs give you a chance to build unique rosters across the season where, you wouldn't necessarily draft someone in a specific spot, and then it opens up the opportunities to pick somebody later on. So, I mean, I would prefer obviously to have the late round Rashee Rice shares, but at the same time, just drafting good players wherever their ADP is also opens you up to some uniqueness across the year. So I'm okay with drafting him, but I do not have as much as I probably should. And Worthy has by far been the way that I've been playing that Chiefs wide receiver room.
Okay, we are one pick away. We do have Mark Andrews and Kincaid still available, so we would be open to one of them. You mentioned not being in the elite. Well, we don't now. We may have none of them in a moment here, as Mark Andrews did go off the board. Patrick Mahomes would still be available at this point, round after ADP. We do get absolutely smashed there as we lose out on Dalton Kincaid as well. I'm probably looking to, it's either pivot here to a QB in Mahomes or else go down to Jaden Reed, Keenan Allen at this particular point of the draft. Kyle Pitts would be the next tight end. There's quite a few teams that have a tight end that are going to be drafting on the next set of picks. I would probably risk that one of them the Pitts might get back. Then we're looking into. Do you want to go with Mahomes?
I think let's get wild. I mean, we already have Worthy and auto drafted for us, so we're good on that.
I love the way you said it auto drafted as your cursor was over the word draft.
Well, I didn't actually click on the button, so I'm okay with that, though. I mean, I don't really have a ton of Mahomes.
I think, again, we're talking about when we're trying to draft some of these quarterbacks. So Mahomes' ADP is usually in the mid fourth in these drafts, and that was at the 505. So you're getting quite a nice discount, 8 to 10 picks of ADP value there at that particular point. I'm good with adding him into the roster at those values. Again, if one of the tight ends was there, that would have been my preferred direction. I was getting quite confident. I was about to say, if Kincaid went, would you take Andrews? But then both of them went in back-to-back picks, which was a miscalculation on my part. We get Mahomes as a nice kind of consolation prize at a discount there. So we are going to see what kicks off now as we get back around the three players in the queue: Jaden Reed, Keenan Allen, Kyle Pitts. Open to all of those. The other player that would come into consideration here would be George Kittle. I have to say that in terms of tight ends being underpriced, I feel like we've talked about Bowers quite a bit. I feel like Bowers is underpriced. I think that's just based on the team he plays for and being a rookie. But I really like getting George Kittle on rosters where it is possible. I was going to mention Rome Odunze, but he does get drafted here in this particular room. So we'll see if we're fortunate enough to get any of those names back, as Jaden Reed also went off the board. But I'm feeling pretty strong about how things have kicked off. And I'm going to stop mentioning names because George Kittle and Keenan Allen go to the drafter in 12. We may need a fallback pick here because Kyle Pitts also off the board. Is there a direction that you think that we need to go here? We'll talk about it a couple of picks early to allow us to make that decision. Brian Watson will be here as an option, but CJ Stroud, we could go back-to-back QB, but I feel like we could push quarterback. JSN's probably the wide receiver I'm reaching down for. Kenneth Walker's available. Rashee Rice is available. Probably going to Brian Thomas or JSN. Have you drafted much Thomas? I've started sprinkling a little bit more over the last couple of weeks, but overall over the course of the offseason, it's not a huge amount. He is also one of those week 12. So if you have started off with a Jamar Chase, Chris Olave, or maybe an Olave T. Higgins team, maybe becomes a little bit problematic at the wide receiver position with the week 12. But we only have one week 12 so far, so it kind of opens the door a little bit.
Yeah, I would have said Kenneth Walker was interesting, but he just got taken. So I would probably go JSN here. I mean, I do take a decent amount of Brian Thomas. I don't know where I'm at on him as far as exposure goes, but I mean, I'd prefer JSN over him in a vacuum no matter what. So I'm good with that if he ends up making it one more pick, and Thomas just went anyway. So kind of.
Yeah, we've got a couple of daggers so far. We've got another dagger here to the roster. That gives us a very little amount of time to walk through this particular pick. I have no wide receiver that I'm really having to go for here, so I'm okay if you wanted to go with James Conner, if you want to go with potentially go with a CJ Stroud to get a second quarterback. But I think Conner probably adds the value to this roster overall with what we've done so far.
Yeah, I agree. I say, I mean, we've talked about on streams before too. I've been taking a little bit of Lab, but not super excited about him. But I do think he could outperform. I think maybe that Chargers offense is not going to be as sad as everybody's kind of predicting it as far as the passing game goes. Especially, I mean, everyone says even though Herbert hurt his foot, he has been looking good. So I'm willing to take a shot on it. I don't think it's really like the smash play picking McConkey, but I don't think it's a terrible pick. But at the same time, I do think grabbing Connor as our anchor running back is definitely a good play.
Yeah, that's the way I would have went. We are though, like the wide receiver cliff is pretty much here at this point. You know, we're up to Hollywood Brown, Keon Coleman, Lad McConkey, Jameson Williams. Would have much preferred to go in those other directions at that last pick, but that was a real wipeout round in terms of the players that did go off the board. Lots of players at our last pick that we felt that would be options all go in terms of daggers. We are in a spot. We obviously have the Kansas City Chiefs with 2 players on the roster so far. You could potentially add in Hollywood Brown if the price was right. Somebody I haven't been really drafting at all. It is fun to watch Kevin's kind of exasperated expression as each time he clicks a star on a player to add to the queue, they automatically disappear out of the queue. So fun times here. I would pitch again, although I'm not usually looking to do it. You know, CJ Stroud here, we would be in the mid 7th again. His ADP usually in the late 6th would fit in, but Hollywood Brown also goes. Jordan Addison, who I mentioned earlier, not being the play that I'm probably looking to do, he comes up here as a potential option now for me based on how he went. Lad McConkey was somebody you mentioned. I haven't drafted a lot of him. If you want to take him, I'm good with that. How are you feeling here on the clock? I think we'll try. Do you want to go wide receiver again here?
Yeah, that'd be my preference. And I mean, I'm okay with any of the 3 if you have a preference.
I would probably go with Jameson, but if you want to go with Lad McConkey, that's fine as well.
So I've been taking enough Lad right now that Jameson Williams is a nice play with I mean, a big boom play. Really, we got a pretty exciting receiver room full of big time boom players. I mean, between Worthy, Williams, I consider Tank Dell a pretty big play, like a big play sort of receiver as well. So.
Yeah. Had you any temptation there to go with the Stroud pick? Obviously, he still hasn't been drafted. I'm expecting this drafter now at the 11th spot to take Kyler Murray, who's still on the board as well. But Stroud, you know, that little bit of a discount, would you have went in that direction?
Every once, if I'm feeling a little frisky, maybe.
Yeah, it's a little bit tricky when you get Mahomes, for example, and then you have taken a running back, so you're up to 5 wide receivers now through 7, which you want to be at, but we also haven't addressed the tight end position, so it makes it a little bit of a luxury pick and a dagger for the team in 11 as the team in 9 has drafted Kyler Murray. So I would imagine there's some fury after the reach that they took Trey McBride from us, but fun times. We are going to have 9 picks to go. We're getting into a range where we see a lot of running backs. I would be kind of making Jalen Warren a priority if he comes back to us here based on the Steelers and the Chiefs, obviously in week 17. And the way I would be looking to play that comeback would be through Warren if possible. Addison, who is in the queue, does go. This is also where I would be hoping to get Brock Bowers. So we have Bowers as a fallback, but we also have him hopefully as the player. Like my ideal scenario here, I think, is get Warren and Bowers. That is a very optimistic view. Have you a priority now based on what we've done with the roster so far, though, in terms of how you would play that out?
I mean, Bowers is my number one most owned guy on Underdog. I think I'm at like 35% exposure on him, but I'm always happy to grab him again.
Oh, he goes.
We don't have to worry about that. So yeah, obviously Warren would become my priority. But even in that situation, if Bowers was there, I mean, I do like Warren a lot as well. But with all the 0 RB guys coming up, I mean, I would probably defer for the tight end just for the fact that there's just a big plethora of running back value about to hit us.
Yeah, so we did get a dagger there as it came through, and Bowers did go, but we do have Warren and Stevenson available in the queue here at the moment. We do have an option actually to have both of those. We obviously get more of an ADP discount on Stevenson, but I think just for week 17 alone, I think I would lean to Warren. And I know he's somebody you read up heavily earlier this offseason that we talked about on a previous show, but obviously the hamstring issue has given him a little bit maybe of a discount in terms of when you're drafting him to your roster. So we have now 2 running backs, and it's going to the key I think here is that where we're not normally having 2 running backs at this point, it's going to give us we may have 2 running backs, but with the elite quarterback makes it a bit more challenging. But I think it does open the door to maybe less running backs needed overall, and then trying to get those additional tight ends onto the roster. Because we have Patrick Mahomes, maybe we sneak in with a 2 QB build rather than having to go up to the three. So we may have to just allocate those roster spots to the tight end position. We took Patrick Mahomes after we missed out on the Kincaid and Andrews options, and then that led to a kind of a crushing round where it was Rome Odunze, Jaden Reed, George Kittle, Keenan Allen, Kyle Pitts, Christian Watson, Brian Thomas, JSN, all off the board, and even Kenneth Walker, who you had touched on. So that was the area of the draft where put a lot of pressure on. But I think now we're leading into a pretty fun zone because we're on the clock. We have the option here between Javonte Williams and Chase Brown. Have you a preference between those? I draft both of those very regularly, so I'll defer to you here as to which one you want.
I'd go Javonte here. I'd have less of him, and there may be some very
Next.
yeah, there may be some very good content up on the site that props up Williams very well. So I think we should go in with him as the best option right now.
Yeah, I agree. I also think that Chase Brown, like if you have the option of one of them, is fantastic. The option of two, earlier in the offseason, you're deferring between both of them. I think it's a pretty nice setup to get. So now we have James Conner, Jalen Warren, and Javonte Williams, which I think is on paper one of our strongest running back rooms that we've assembled in one of these drafts. And again, that's going to free up some probably pick leverage as we move through. Now, the pressure sometimes on us at this point is you have to get those players or your team can kind of slip away a little bit. And this draft room, I think, outside of tight end, we are kind of opening up to a best player available sort of approach. The problem is with our wide receiver room, we will have some targets that we like, but really getting prime targets can be a little bit tricky because there's only a couple per round in general as we move through the rest of these double-digit rounds. But I'm feeling pretty good about it. Get the elite quarterback, get three what I think are very solid running backs, and then we have the five wide receivers to go along with it. So how are you feeling, even though we probably don't have as much tight end, I guess, would be the firepower that we would have. Usually, I think we would have our elite tight end instead of Patrick Mahomes, but getting Mahomes along with Worthy, I think, is a fun setup for this roster.
Yeah, and especially the way that kind of like the first tier of zero RB guys dries up pretty quickly. I'm really happy with getting these three. The James Conner, Jalen Warren, and Javonte is a really good running back room for zero RB guys. It's essentially like we're just drafting first round wide receiver or running backs for people like us. It doesn't really get much more heavy on draft capital than this sort of build. So I'm happy with it, and I think we're set up pretty much across the board.
There might be a chance that we even get to five running backs, and that might be enough for us in this particular room. Is that what you're thinking? Or are you still looking to get to six?
I think it's just however the room plays out. I know that there's one late tight end pick that's really going to tie this build together, and I'm already planning for it, and hopefully you are too. I'm sure you probably are. So one Mr. Greg Dulcich really could make this roster and bring home the bacon.
Usually the people drafting alongside me don't want to add him to the roster, so we'll see if that happens. And don't tease me too early in case it doesn't happen.
If he gets sniped, we'll both be equally upset.
Yeah. So we are heading into round 10 here. We get Blake Corum, Devin Singletary, Tua goes off the board. A little bit of a QB run with Caleb Williams, Joe Burrow going off the board, and Tua, and that kind of pick stretch. Interesting just to see who gets to us here in the 10th. It's in the 10 and 11's an area where it feels like you can make a lot of plans, but it really depends then on what actually does come through. So Tyjae Spears would be the dream pick here for me, and to add another one of those zero RB targets. He went Geiger. 2 picks away.
He goes.
Yeah. Jerry Jeudy is somebody that I've kind of talked to you about on some of these drafts in terms of players after the cliff that I'm looking to add. Is he somebody that we could add to this roster? The names available by the queue: Prescott, Purdy, Dowdle, Ford, Lockett. We're down then to Dallas Goedert, Trevor Lawrence, Myers, Gus Edwards, Adonai Mitchell. I feel like for me, Jerry Jeudy's a clear wide receiver target in this zone.
Yeah, I'm not as hyped on Jeudy as a lot of people on the site are, but also that's where the humility-based drafting comes in. We're basically, if 5 people are saying like this is the right pick and one's saying like I don't know, like generally just go with the wisdom of the masses. So I'm okay with Jeudy, or I'd also be looking at Polk. Polk is a guy.
I'm good with either. If you have a stronger take on Polk, I'm okay with that. I feel like Jeudy is the one that I would click on solo, but you go for it if you want.
We'll go Polk. Just let's say just Judy's. We just keep giving him passes every year, and he just keeps letting us down. So he had the one good season. I don't know if it was 2 years ago. I want to say
Yeah, the
Russ's
one good
first season.
final week, maybe. It's a
So
3 touchdown game that won people a lot of money, obviously, a couple of seasons back with the Broncos. Polk is somebody I'm adding, and one of the things that would be nice with a GD pick on this roster is we have no week 10s so far, which would have, give you that additional wide receiver in that wide receiver room, but we only have 2 week 14s, so we're okay as we move through. I kind of was thinking a little bit ahead as we look into the Broncos, for example. If we do get Dulcich, it's a week 14. If we were to add, Bo Nix would be a week 14. So there was just some of that kind of in my mind. But I'm like you mentioned with Judy, there is that part of like we're optimistic. We're hoping that it goes right for him. We're betting on the talent, but the talent has not consistently shown out. And I have a lot of concerns around the Browns quarterback situation with Deshaun Watson. So there's a lot of things there that would pause the brakes for me on Judy. So it's not a case of I have to have him there. Jalen Polk would be another target for me in this range. Now, Judy, yeah, he does go. I was going to say he might have got back. So we are about to be back up on the clock here. And Myers goes, you're adding Nick Chubb to the queue. I feel like we don't necessarily need him on this roster, but if we were ever going to add him on a team where it could take the missing player for those weeks, it kind of fits in here. Have you anyone else you want to pitch for outside of Chubb?
Not necessarily. I think Chubb's the pick, and I know how you feel about him, so I'm 100% okay clicking on him. I'd say Freiermuth is a bring back on as it's our first tight end, but I'm not super excited about that.
Yeah, let's take Chubb. So the reason with Chubb, obviously, is like we've talked about this a couple of times on different streams and shows. My feeling was always that Chubb was like a week 6 onwards play, that was going to be the hammer down the stretch. The same with the TJ Hawkinson. It is very disappointing when you then get the news, obviously, that he's on, the PUP or whatever for the opening 6 weeks of the season. But those conversations were always coming. It feels like they were always happening. The trouble is now that they have happened and we have, have to accept it. So there was one morning where the notifications were popping up on my phone and it was like, Jonathan Brooks will start the season, and basically every time it tells you like this means he will automatically miss the first 4 games, and then it would be like Nick Chubb misses the first 4 games. So there's a few of those in a row where I'm like, oh, this feels terrible, but like realistically, that has been built into that play the entire time. So now you might also get a slight ADP discount on those players, which the prices kind of already had factored in because that's why they were going as late as they are. So it's disappointing to lose them for those 4 weeks. And obviously having zeros is not beneficial. But I have had a lot more fragile running back rooms through this point of the draft where I have taken Nick Chubb. So adding him into a room where you have 3 perceived players who will be getting guaranteed points in week 1 is a nice place to add it in there and get him on the roster. So we're up to the 4. I mentioned, do we go to 5 and stop? Maybe the Chubb pick puts a little bit of pause on that. I am interested. You did add Hawkinson also to the queue, and he would, be in the same conversation. But I think just the upside of some of these plays is worth it if you can manufacture the points around him. Then Charbonnet goes. He would have been interested in coming back to us. But I think we're setting up pretty nicely here. But we really are going to have to battle the tight end position. Are you thinking we need 3? Do you think we need 4? What are you looking to do in this? Like, we talk a lot about double elite tight end. Well, we're quite far away from that territory in this draft. What are we trying to do late here?
I'd say 3. I think just the opportunity cost of having 4 tight ends is just kind of makes the rest of filling out the rest of the roster pretty rough. So, I mean, my preference here, even though Freiermuth is a bigger ADP, I think the elite upside of Hawkinson down the stretch is the way that I would hope to play this as long as he can get to us. I don't know.
Yeah, how do you feel about taking Freiermuth if he gets to us and see if Hawkinson makes it back?
Yeah, we can try.
The reason I'd be willing, yeah, I would be kind of willing to risk it for the reason of like, Freiermuth went. So let's take Hawkinson for the risk.
Okay.
This also opens us up to potential Sam Darnold roster as well, if we want to get discussed. But the reason I was going to say we have like fallbacks is there's a lot of running backs now, and at least one of them should get back to us. We have Javonte, so it's not as important to get a Jaleel McLaughlin, but there's quite a few running backs coming through this range here where I'm open to getting on the roster. But I do feel like prioritizing maybe the tight end position, with what we've built already. And even if it is players that you're not as excited about, a Colm and Luke Musgrave, adding them to the roster. And then, because the problem is if we continue to pass on the tight ends, it may be a case that then you're into a Hawkinson Dulcich build, and then you're starting to really scramble at the end. So if we're looking to just have the 3 tight ends on the roster, I think taking Colm and Luke Musgrave, one of those 2, and then trying to see what we can sneak back at the running back position. Now that does mean passing on, Tyler Algier and those sort of names, but they mightn't even make it to us at this pick anyway. But Bucky Irving, Braylon Allen, they're all players that would fit this roster who I would be hopeful might come back to us in the next round if we go tight end here. So what do you want to do?
Just for correlation's sake, I would probably go Musgrave, but do you have a strong preference?
I would go Musgrave as well. I'm still, and I keep mentioning this, I'm still drafting Colm, but I'm trying to get him, at a little bit of a discount to come back through. I'm not as concerned, I think, as a lot of people are on that situation with the tight ends with the Bears. But I do like the correlation with Musgrave there, and I like, how that Packers situation is going to set up for both tight ends. So like getting him in there feels like quite a secure early season play off the Hawkinson play.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the Kmet stuff's overblown with Gerald Everett. Gerald Everett is kind of, I don't know, like a worse tight end version of Judy, where I feel like people just keep giving him shots and keep giving him shots, and he kind of just keeps, letting us down. So the hype on Gerald Everett is long gone, and I don't really care a whole lot about what anybody's saying about him. Kmet's had 2 great seasons in a row, even though their OC changed. I'm not super worried. I think Kmet's a really good value right now, even though I do not have as much of him as I would, as me talking up would say I do. So
I feel like sometimes when we're on these shows and somebody mentions a player, sometimes we go into defending a player that is maybe not even essentially a player we're targeting, but just you start to go down a path and you continue down it. But I have quite a bit of Colm across dynasty formats as well as early season best ball stuff. So I am still very much in, but I kind of have that little bit of a reluctance there. But I do like the bring back option that opens up that week 17 as well with the Packers. And maybe, who knows, maybe Bucky Irving's gone off the board. Maybe that opens up the door as well to a Marshawn Lloyd at running back. So I think we're coming across with a pretty fun build here, but we just have to nail this landing over the last couple of picks. We have 6 wide receivers. Depending on what you want to do at the wide receiver position, I do think the likes of Tolbert is a fun pick here if we wanted to go that way. Hit me with some other names that you would like to add here.
Well, beyond Tolbert, there really isn't a whole lot of intriguing names here. So
we just skip the pick if Tolbert goes. We'll just.
I'm just thinking more of late picks. With Mahomes in tow, I'm okay with just sticking to 2 QBs because I think he could have another one of those 5,050 seasons this year. I think the Chiefs offense is going to explode again this year. So I'd be okay with waiting to take Knicks at the end and kind of looking for stacking options with him with Mims or even Franklin in the last round if we want to do that. So
there's no other tight end or that you feel like we have to get here. I think we can. You're getting down as far as likely, and that's why I'm good to go Tolbert here and kind of probably seal up the wide receiver room at this point and focus on some of those running backs, tight ends as we go through here.
Yeah, I think, and I'm okay with even if my target probably towards the end would be Knicks, or even if you want to do a Darnold build, I'm sure he'll probably fall considerably late, but I would be hoping to stick to 2 QBs. I don't know if you have a preference for 3. But
no, I'm good. I'm good. When you have Mahomes, and if you get a solid second option, and I know people are saying solid second option, they mightn't be, linking that to, a Bo Nix or certainly a Sam Darnold. But for the purposes of the contest, I think it's the way to build these rosters out when you have one of the elite quarterbacks. We do lose out on Marshawn Lloyd, who I had mentioned, but we do have, Vidal, Tracy, and a multitude of other options. I feel like if we had gone 0 RB in this draft and, passed on the Connor pick and maybe we missed out on Javonte and we had skipped on Chubb, I do feel like, the priority there would have probably been Lloyd. So again, just the way the roster is filled out puts you in a different direction. I think we will be coming up kind of into that range of where And I don't know how late you want to risk. It's usually the 18th round at the moment for Greg Dulcich. We are now in the 15th round. I think you have both starred the running backs here. I think both of those are fine picks. I would go with Vidal. The reason, again, bye week advantage with the week 11 for the Giants, which would be the same as the Cardinals. So I would add him in there. That gets us up now to James Conner, Warren, Javonte, Nick Chubb, and Kamame Vidal. Bye week spread across all those, so we don't have any crossover, having 5 running backs there. I think we can get to 6, but I think it's, if the player available is unpassable or if we get into a very flat situation. When you were talking about, the pick there with when you're looking at the Jalen Tolbert pick, I think when you're in that point, you could go with, some of the Broncos wide receivers potentially entering the conversation, if you're looking to wait and get one of those guys. But the difficulty is then if you do wait and you don't get them, then it can leave you kind of reaching up again at the wide receiver position. So we're 10 picks away. We have, a couple of picks left to go. Bo Nix, Sam Darnold, both added to the queue. Tyrone Tracy still in there. What do we want to do with the tight end position? Is it something that you want to take, a calculated reach and take a Dulcich? Somebody else I've been drafting quite a bit of is Mike Gesicki. Goes in the 18th round in this format as well. Would be a fallback option for me. Joan Johnson's an option, but it'd probably be Dulcich or Gesicki that I'm kind of looking to get to the roster. Probably able to get them maybe in the 17th before it comes back, maybe if we want. But is there one of those that you would prioritize if we didn't have an additional option here, or is there somebody that you're really Bo Nix went? Is there somebody you're really hoping comes back? You're kind of into a zone now where quarterbacks do slide in some of these drafts, but you are kind of into that zone now where you're waiting to see if a Darnold gets back to you.
Yeah, my priority. I mean, we could still prioritize. I don't think
QB has actually been very early in this as I look through it now. In terms of that round 14, did hoover up, Matthew Stafford, Geno Smith, Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson, and then Baker Mayfield. So a heavy QB round pulled some of those names up from where they would normally be going. Like a Geno's usually in the 15th. Not a huge reach, but we're down now to that Sam Darnold, Bo Nix territory with Bo Nix already been off the board. Are we into a Sam Darnold roster if he makes it to us here?
I mean, we could try. The other thing that I was thinking, we would probably have to pass up on our boy Dulcich, which I don't want to do because, I mean, it's really just this is the last draft of the year. We want to get Dulcich on this roster. No matter, I mean, he's almost like he's almost grandfathered into the end of this roster. But also, I mean, I know Neil Dutton's favorite rookie tight end has been Theo Johnson, so I wouldn't even be opposed to doing a Daniel Jones, Theo Johnson stack at the end if you have any interest in that.
I would be open to it, but the thing is, it is a narrow path. Yeah. I would probably be at this pick would be Tyrone Tracy or Darnold. They would be my 2 options.
Oh, and Tracy we only have the one now. I mean,
Sam go to Darnold the QB. Here's the way to make this decision. Go to the QB list. Do you want Drake May, Bryce Young, Justin Fields, Daniel Jones, Derek Carr? Which one do you want over Darnold?
None of them sound super appealing. I mean,
we also have 2. We have 2 Vikings. If we're going to do it, this is this Darnold roster.
Yeah, let's go with it. I said that
we only need them. Oh, you know what I just realized too?
Oh, they're both the same buy. I didn't realize that either.
I was forcing you to pick him. We will manage it. We will manage it.
Yeah.
So we did give ourselves a bit of a dagger there without fully contemplating it. I think we kind of wanted that Tracy pick to make it back to us. So we have 2 week 6s at QB. That opens up the door to your option for the Daniel Jones stack. I would be open to going Dulcich and just taking a 3rd quarterback for the playoff application when it would come back to us, and see who gets back to us in the 20th round and add one of those quarterbacks in. I would be very much open to adding a Justin Fields, but he did get drafted a couple of picks ago. I feel like if we get Dulcich and then take an additional quarterback shot, and the last round would be the way to go. That was a suboptimal decision there, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, we were both in on it. You said you forced it in, but no, we were both. I mean, he was kind of where I was leaning as well. So it was poor preparation on both of our parts. So across the board, it's all right though. I mean, it's unique. So maybe it'll end up coming in working out for us. So let's add the league winner. Let's add the contest winner right now, and we'll figure out what's going on the way back.
Is that the first time in 150 drafts that you've gone with a 2 quarterback build that they had the same bye week?
No, I love the week 14 guys. I haven't been doing it a ton, but also even Jake Bose's research says that it's not a roster killer to have two if you only stay with two and they're both on the same bye week.
It's the 1 week. You see, it's about the the
Yeah.
firepower the rest of it. I do think having three could be fine on this roster. We have the 5 running backs, 7 wide receivers, 3 tight ends, and 2 quarterbacks. So I'm very much open to whichever one comes back here to us and
Mhm.
adding them in. Not the ideal situation, obviously, Kevin, but I think with what we did at running back, it can allow us to make it through with the 3 quarterbacks. Do you want to? It's basically an additional running back or additional quarterback when we get to this point,
Mhm.
and we're kind of ran through a lot of the running back options outside of Will Shipley.
Yeah, I like Roshan too. I've been adding more Cam Akers too, even though he's not a very sexy pick, and a guy with two that has had two torn Achilles in his career isn't the most explosive option to pick. But I've been adding him. I think Damian Pierce looked pretty awful in this preseason, to put it bluntly. So I think Akers is probably going to take that second spot, and we're none of us are really big Joe Mixon stands, so I think Akers may have some value, even though he's not a very exciting pick. But I think the way that Drake May will probably be starting, towards the end of the season, or well, I don't know. I guess we have to look at week 6. So if we don't think Drake May is going to be starting by week 6, then he's probably not a good option for us. So I don't know how you feel about that.
That would be the concern, that it might be like a post that time or he comes in.
Mhm.
I have concerns about Derek Carr finishing the season as the Saints starting quarterback,
Yes.
but I don't really have a feeling that it could be out by 6 weeks. I would probably go with Daniel Jones for the potential rushing element of it if we want to go QB. The question really comes into, do we want to add one of these quarterbacks or do we want to add an additional running back? They're the kind of two options. And it is a fine balance here to the roster.
Mhm.
Um,
And I know all bye weeks are really created equal. It doesn't really matter if they're both on week 6 buys or week 14s, but at least knowing that like both of our guys have a chance to be playing week 14 makes me feel a little better, even though we're no matter what, we're still missing out on a week, with no quarterback. But it could easily be the same if they're both injured. So I mean, I would either say it's either Will Shipley or Daniel
Daniel
Jones.
Jones. Yeah, that's the way I would be looking at it as well. So we're 4 picks away. We'll see how it comes through here. I would expect there's a good chance both of them will be available. It
Mhm.
really comes down to, do you want to take a 0 in week 6 and then have some extra upside at running back throughout the season? The other part is, though, like, we don't know this and we don't want this to happen, but if Mahomes goes down or Sam Darnold's terrible, maybe having that third QB and also covering the bye week is, advantageous, especially when you get into those playoff rounds, having more opportunities at like, those 20 plus point quarterback games is probably the way to play it. So I would probably at this point lean towards Jones, but I'm
Yeah.
also very open to Shipley as well. So I wouldn't let you make the decision in 3 picks time to see who's available here.
Well, I think we go with Jones. As long as he makes it back to us. Like I said, it's not the optimal spot to be in, but I said I'm okay with it. And I have a ton of Shipley, but the his path to
Yeah, it's a
seeing
longer
early
season
season,
play as well.
yeah. And I do like I mean, like I said, for us being zero RB guys, us investing as much as we did at the running backs, even though most casual drafters would be like saying that we're kind of insane for leaving it with the guys that we have. Like I think like that's probably one of the highest draft capital running back rooms that you and I have had in our drafts.
Definitely that the two of us have had.
And
Uh,
Shipley went anyway, so it
yeah,
makes our decision
Shipley
a little
did
easier.
win, so our decision has been made. It's a Daniel Jones pick, and we just wanted to do all that for entertainment purposes. We always had planned a 3 quarterback roster with Daniel Jones. Isn't that right, Kevin?
Yeah, absolutely. So
You
all the
mentioned,
smoke and mirrors.
yeah. You can't give away all your trade secrets here as we're drafting it, but yeah, that was a little bit of a slip up. But I do think having that third quarterback, with it being a Sam Darnold, is beneficial. I thought the Sam
Mhm.
Darnold pick, even though I completely slipped on the bye week, holding my hands up there with you can tell I haven't drafted a huge amount of Patrick Mahomes rosters when like the bye week didn't even come into consideration. When I mentioned bye weeks about nearly every pick, but when we do have Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson, I think that's a QB that, even though we're not betting on him being brilliant, we're betting on those two players bringing us to glory. So I think adding Sam Darnold to that equation was still the smart play. And
Mhm.
we do have Nick Chubb. Vidal might be somebody who takes a bit of time in that early season as well. But I do feel like Warren, Chubb, and Connor are players who will bring us along there. Not Chubb, sorry, Warren, Williams, and Connor. But then if you get Nick Chubb back week 6, like you're really looking at those top 3 running backs to be getting you through that point and then trying to supercharge the rest of the roster. So I'm pretty happy with how the roster turned out. We did get sniped, or I used the word dagger a few times in the show. There's a few of them picks that were just disappearing off the board as we were one pick away. So we end up with Patrick Mahomes, Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones, James Conner, Jalen Warren, Javonte Williams, Nick Chubb, Kamami Vidal, Justin Jefferson, Chris Olave, Tank Dell, Xavier Worthy, Jameson Williams, Jalen Polk, and Jalen Tolbert. And then that leads us as well to TJ Hawkinson, Luke Musgrave, and Greg Dulcich. I think like it's a loaded wide receiver room. We're obviously hoping on Musgrave and Dulcich and the kind of Nick Chubb situation to get us through those opening points. I think there's a good chance it is week 7 when you see TJ Hawkinson back. They have the week 6 bye. That would make sense. But then you're hoping those 2 tight ends get you through that point, and then you're basically waiver wire and an elite tight end onto the roster in week 7. That's kind of the goal with doing that. It is a little bit tricky, the Chubb and Hawkinson, but what I have found, I don't know why. I don't know if it's if I draft one and just say, to hell with it, let's go. I tend to have those 2 guys paired on a lot of rosters, so I could have some rosters that are completely done at that point, but I think the upside is worth it. And you're going for the upside of these teams because winning this contest is going to take, both incredible luck, but also like having players that just hit the absolute ceiling in those weeks. So that's what you're trying to do with those particular players. Looking back, outside of the bye week thing, which I think I'm fine with now with the 3rd quarterback, and anything additional you would change? I think like wide receivers are extremely strong. Obviously, we took them early, but even the Williams, Polk, Tolbert picks are very strong in my opinion. We talked about bye weeks at quarterback, but week 14 we have 2, and week 6 we have 2 at the wide receivers, but lots of flexibility there. I'm pretty happy. I think I'd give this team like a 7.5 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, our receiver room is stacked. I'm very happy with the way our receiver room shook out. Having the elite option of TJ Hawkinson coming down the stretch is helpful, and I think Musgrave is. I go back and forth on if Tucker Kraft how far apart in value Tucker Kraft and Musgrave really should be, but I mean, it's all signs point to Musgrave at least getting like the starting nod coming out the gate, so that's going to be helpful for us, even though I think they'll both have a role. And then, I mean, Dulcich really is just the one that's going to bring it home. So overall, I mean, even having, and obviously like a lot of times looking at rosters, we're not always used to having elite QBs on there. So that adds a whole other element onto a roster that, generally I'm not really looking at the QBs as much.
Yeah.
I'm generally focusing on like, oh, how did I do it wide receiver or how did I do it running back? But then when you realize that we have Mahomes on there, and like I said earlier in the stream too, like I do believe that him and CJ Stroud both, they both have that opportunity this year to go for that like 5,050 TD season this year. I feel strongly about that. So, I mean, overall, I'm pretty happy. Except as long as we have our early season running back production to carry us, and then hopefully Nick Chubb comes back and is able to produce and be a solid part of the offense. I mean, I really like the team. I think overall, I would have preferred to do like a 2-6-7-3 build, but at the end of the day, I mean, you can't really, especially when we flub up a pick, like this, we make the best of a not so poor situation, but like a less than optimal situation.
Yeah, and I guess that the part of it is like you mentioned the build, like 2 quarterbacks, 6 running backs would have been the way I would prefer it. But realistically, like when we look at it, if we had just Daniel Jones and Patrick Mahomes, I wonder like we're probably still feeling the same way about the quarterback room. So having the 3rd one there maybe will work out for us. I think it's been a fun draft. Let us know what your thoughts are on the draft overall. But as we get ready to finish up, Kevin, you mentioned some of the stuff that's coming up on rotoviz.com. You've been covering a lot of ground up on the site. Anything in the hopper for this coming week that you want to let the listeners know about?
The biggest thing is just a redraft series on Yahoo ADP. So earlier in the season, Blair kind of looked at ESPN ADP against like FFPC main event and Fantasy Pros Championship. So I kind of looked at his paper and kind of cheated off of that and kind of did more of a draft plan looking at Yahoo ADP, not so much player specific takes, but like basically how to build a zero RB on Yahoo and the best pockets of the draft to be, filling out our rosters. So really at the end of the day, I just really wanted to, especially for maybe newer readers that aren't used to doing zero RB, kind of lay out like, hey, this is how we should do it. And it's really think that home leagues are really one of the few spots anymore that we can even like hopefully find that or reach the goal of having like 6 of the top 15 fantasy wide receivers by the end of the season. So it's like, this is how maybe we can achieve that goal. I did start, a lot of the newsroom stuff that's been coming out is basically just like shorter, more concise articles. So I've been working a lot on those, maybe stuff that doesn't need like a full feature length article written about it, but it's still newsworthy and fantasy worthy content. So I've been doing a lot of that. And then pretty much as soon as the season kicks off, I've been doing the fantasy football report. I'm going to be doing that with Hassan and Blair. So that's a lot of fun. We did a Fantasy Pros FFPC draft last Sunday. We're going to be doing one this upcoming Sunday in preparation for the season. So a lot going on, a lot in the hopper, a lot of stuff jumping around, but I'm pretty much trying to put out an article every day and do as many pods as I can and get ready for the season.
Yeah, so it's not far away now. And you mentioned the draft you did with the two guys there. That was up on the RotoViz YouTube channel live. And then obviously you can still find it there. It is also available as a podcast form on RotoViz Radio and the RotoViz Report podcast channel. So check that one out as Blair, Hassan, and Kevin drafted in that one. You mentioned the home league element of things. Myself and Sean did a quick home league pod that we referenced some of your work on in that there particular article or in that podcast, along with some of Sean's home league, and then just some general thoughts that we had from listener questions. So that is up on the RotoViz Overtime podcast feed if you want to check that out. That is going to do it for this edition, my last draft with Kevin. Hopefully we'll have some more conversations during the season. Good luck to everyone in 2024 with the drafts that you've put in. Hopefully we get a winner in BBM5 from the RotoViz community across all those contests. We do get a lot of shout outs after the season from people who have consumed the content at this time of year that go on to have big success then in some of these major contests. So hopefully we get the same outcome this year. But Kevin, myself and yourself won't be too disappointed if we end up with some of that prize money at the end of the year. So hopefully that is the case. But that is going to do it for this show. My name is Colm Kelly. You can follow me on Twitter at @OverToMarland. My co-host is Kevin Szafraniec. Kevin, hit me with the Twitter handle at the FF Cat Dad, at the Cat Dad FF. Which one is it?
Cat Dad FF, yeah. And even like I never even had a Twitter account until basically I started writing for the site. So I'm trying to be more intentional about making sure I go on there and repost plenty of stuff and news articles with like mini takes and stuff on it. So trying to make it an account worth following for all the listeners out there. So I'm working on it, and so come give me a follow over there.
Yeah, give him a follow on Twitter. I was doing the outro there, and I was like, well, this isn't Sean Siegel. What's the rest of the outro? And then, so I had an idea of what the Twitter handle was, but I kind of get the letters jumbled up sometimes in my head. But go over, follow Kevin over there. The link will be in today's show notes to simplify it for everybody if you want to check it out. But until we are back, have a good one.